On Book TV on C-SPAN 2.
Up next on Book TV's Afterwards, Gold Star father Khizr Khan recalls his immigration to the United States and offers thoughts on what it means to be an American. He's interviewed by California Congressman Jimmy Panetta.
Mr. Khan, let me just start off by telling you what an honor this is that I get this chance to sit down face to face, person to person, eye to eye with you, someone who has meant so much for so many people in this country and outside of this country. Thank you very much for all that you have done, your family has done, and the service of your sons, all three of them as well. And when I read the book that you wrote, The American Family, a memoir of hope and sacrifice, what I found it about was not necessarily about a dark time in your life. What I found this book to be about was more about enlightenment for your son, an American hero, for you as a student of law, and for your family as immigrants. And what provided that light, that beacon, what was that torch I found based on my reading of this book for you, was the United States, its people, its culture, and its Constitution. And when you see that right away when you open up the book. And it was funny because when I opened up this book, I thought I got a used book because I saw this as you open up the first cover. And you see some writing and the highlighting and the notes, and it looked like one of my books, because this is how I do it. But what I realized is that, this is the copy of your Constitution and your notes. And so I guess I want to start off with is, why did you feel it necessary to have this as the first thing that people see when they open up your book?
Sure. Thank you. I am in awe of sitting before you. And I want to start with telling you that what your family and your service and your family's service has given us as ordinary citizens. I have watched Honorable Leon Panetta for many years for his moral, ethical, strong leadership in all phases of his life in Washington, away from Washington. And here I am sitting in front of you. What an honor it is. What an honor it is. I'm delighted and I'm glad and I'm humbled by this coincidence that the person that I have admired for moral, ethical leadership, and here I am sitting in front of you. So I'm humbled.
Oh, thank you.
Well, the Constitution has meant so very much to me. And we tell all that story in detail in the book, that coming from that humble background where no civil liberties existed, twice under martial law, twice having lived without any liberties, the martial law administrator would decide, stop all the newspapers, no newspaper will be printed. This is a common trait. Two things are very common among authoritarian mentalities, and our audience can draw the conclusion. One is they don't like free press because free press criticizes them. Second thing is rule of law. They do not like judges, they do not like rule of law. And that had given me such a perspective of not having any civil liberties to having all these dignities. And as we speak further, I'll tell you what a moment it was when I went to take the oath of citizenship. Yeah. I wish every American would at least read the oath of citizenship. It means so very much, and it speaks the hopefulness, the dignities that are enshrined in our Constitution and our Bill of Rights. So it is that had kept me going, kept us going, and we are continuing to move forward.
That's good. Now, you in the book, you said that the Constitution is rather dry, understandable, but you marveled, absolutely marveled at a few of its amendments, if not all of them. But there were a couple that stood out to you. And number one, and that's, you see it first thing, is Amendment 14, civil rights. And you go on to use in the book an analogy about your time visiting a Department of Motor Vehicles. Explain that, if you could.
I had just arrived, and I was told that I should hurry up and go to get my driver's license. So I took the bus from where I was living. This is in Houston, Texas, and I arrived to Department of Motor Vehicle. And I get in line to go inside, and there's a hall full of people. Everybody is coming in, taking the number, and sitting down. And this is few days I have arrived in this country, and I had read about rule of law, equality of treatment, that under rule of law, everyone is treated equally. And I am seeing it with my own eyes now, how everyone is treated equally. Everybody comes in, gets the number, sits down, waits for the turn, gets thing done, and out you go.
Oh, yeah.
But that wasn't the case. I didn't come with that background. I came from the background that if you are third cousin to the minister or to the governor, you don't stand in line. Lines are for ordinary people. You go from the back door, you get your things done. Sometimes things are done and sent your home. Having that concept and having read what rule of law means, I was just in awe, and some of my American friends laugh at that explanation, but that is the display of rule of law of this blessed country. And rest of the world, believe me, why saving our democracy, protecting it, making it strong is so important at this time. Rest of the world comes to learn these values, value of rule of law, equality of dignity, due process, and we are well served by keeping these values strong and being fully aware that there is a risk we can lose all of this. It's guaranteed. These rights are inalienable, to which I say, but these are not self-executory.
Exactly.
We as ordinary citizens make it self-executory by standing for them. Whenever those rights are violated, we go to the court and we get them implemented again. Exactly. So it is with that humble beginning of watching rule of law that I came to America.
Exactly. There was I was honored to watch the inauguration of President Obama, the second inauguration, in which he said, one of my favorite quotes, although our rights are self-evident, they are not self-executing.
Exactly.
And I think that says it all. In regards to the rule of law, another part that you pointed out, the First Amendment, and you pointed out one of the first line of the First Amendment, Congress shall make no law. Why did that stand out to you?
I am a student of world constitutions. The very first course I took that brought me to Declaration of Independence was comparative study of world constitution. I studied 4 constitutions, and we tell that story in great detail in the book. But no other constitution in the world, and I implore America to read one more time the first 5 words of the First Amendment, and they tell the whole story where these dignities, human dignities enshrined in our constitutions stand in the conscious and in the fabric of this nation is Congress shall make no law. 5 words. They speak so clearly about the nations, about the forefathers, emphasis on some human dignities, I call them. Freedom of press, freedom of religion, freedom of assembly. These are the golden nuggets of our Bill of Rights. And it is that I implore that no other constitution has. Most constitutions have Parliament will have this right. Parliament can do this. Parliament is authorized to do this. National Assembly can do this. No other constitution says Congress shall make no laws. So sacred by these 5 words, the rights that are listed.
Exactly, yeah. Now, clearly, based on what I've read in the book and just listening to you right now, you are a constitutional scholar. But where did that start? Where did you first study? Where did you first meet the Constitution of the United States?
Yeah, 1972, long time ago. I was second-year law student. By the way, I'm not a constitutional scholar. I am the beneficiary of the dignities that are enshrined. That is why I am so passionate about these values that are enlisted in our documents, in our founding documents. So this is 1972. I am second-year law student. I have taken a course titled Comparative Studies of the World Constitution, Constitution of USSR. Yes, there used to be USSR, which is Russia now. And then the Constitution of Germany and Magna Carta, which is the foundation of the British system, and then Constitution of United States. So I got the material. There was no book, but there were materials for that course, and I brought them from bookstore in the bus to my dormitory room, and I placed them on the table, and I am standing, and my eyes go to the very first page, and the very first line is listed Declaration of Independence. I was taken aback. You don't declare your independence. Independence is given when the colonist, when the king decides that I have nothing to gain from these people anymore, let them free. And that was the history of subcontinent and most of the colonized world. Some struggle, some effort, some begging, some protests, but no one declares the independence. Read the history of decolonization and you will come to appreciate the spirit of the forefathers of this blessed nation. They declared their independence in 1,338 words of Declaration of Independence. 18 grievances are listed. Worth reading one more time. And so that was my first, so I stood there and I read it, half understanding English wasn't my strong suit. I read it, and the more I read it, the more in awe I was that why did the rest of the world, now this is 1972, Declaration of Independence, the summary was written, drafted by Thomas Jefferson and 5 others that finalized the Declaration of Independence. Why did we have to wait? This nation declares its independence in so early, in 1774, the drafting of the independence is being discussed in the nation. 1776, we are declaring our independence. Rest of the world waited so long. What a spirit of this nation. I, at that moment, could only dream and remain in awe, did not have the caliber or courage to even think that maybe one day I'll go to see this nation. These people that have come from this background and all, it is for that reason that I'm still in awe of this great nation. And I implore every American to read your founding documents so that we are firm that all the challenges that our democracy faces today, so that we are aware where we have come from and what our heritage is for these values.
Yeah. Now, you had always had an incentive to study. You grew up in Pakistan, just in a town north of Lahore, correct?
Yes.
And there was somebody who was very influential and had a quote that motivated you to study more. And who was that?
That was my blessed grandfather, and he always said that to me, that a person is not complete unless his education or her education is complete. He always reminded me that continue your education, and so that was at the foundation of this learning more and learning more regardless of the difficulties and lack of resources. I tell to my children always that lack of resources, no excuse not to continue to move forward to complete your education. And here we are. We were just blessed to have had that instruction at a very early age.
You studied the Constitution in Pakistan, but then you were able to learn about American culture in Dubai. Explain that.
So I arrive in Dubai, very few dollars or rupees in my hand, did not have a proper place to rest. I arrived Friday so that I could get accumulated. Now I am meeting the American generosity and America's true America on Monday morning. I had slept on bare floor, just the walls and the roof, and towel was my bed sheet, and the suitcase was my pillow, and all. I had rented a small room from a cab driver. So I go to work, and this American executive of the oil company, Alan, greets me, and I tell that whole story in the book in great detail. So he takes me to his room, and he said, "Khizr, this is all of these files. We all need to put them together, organize them. This is an American oil company that is operating in Dubai, just starting, and we need to hire so many people, and so many expats are coming." And he's giving me all these instructions, and I am to start organizing everything in that office. And he looks at me within 5 minutes, and he said, "You look tired. Where you been staying?" And I was embarrassed to tell him. I told him I have rented a room for a couple of days, and I'm staying there. And he continues to look at me, and he said, "Okay." He picks up the phone and makes a phone call. And in about 30 minutes or so, a lady walks in, and she introduces herself. "I am Mrs. Allen, Lisa." Now I'm facing the graciousness of America. It is so deeply engraved on my heart and in my soul that every time I think of America, I think of Ellen and Lisa. They said, "Let's go your home," and I'm embarrassed. I thought they were wanting me to take them to the room where I'm staying. And I'm trembling inside that I would be so embarrassed to show them where I'm staying. But they said, "No, come." So we walk and get in the car, and they drive. The company had rented several apartments to accommodate expats that were coming from all parts of the world to work for this company in Dubai. So we get to a building, and they open the door of an apartment with the key, and I walk in. And I had never seen such a luxurious place. It had 3 pillows on the bed. It has towels. It had plates and spoons and forks and the kettle on the stove. And then Lisa opens the door of the refrigerator and shows me there's bread and butter and jam and all. I just could not believe that this is happening. This is my first exposure, first interaction with America. Yeah. And they said that, "Khizr, you're tired, rest today, and we will start tomorrow." And I closed the door when they left. And I was so humbled, so grateful. Even today, I begin to lose my composure when I think of their generosity, their kindness. They didn't care. They didn't owe me anything at all. For me, that is what America had been, is, shall remain: generous, genuine, pure-hearted, kind, accepting of others. It is that has made me such a grateful citizen of this nation.
Exactly. Now, Alan and Lisa, they gave you the job, the house, a car. I think he even gave you his office as well at one point. Yeah. But he also gave you something else that I think is interesting: your appreciation for a certain type of music. Is that correct?
Yeah, this is first time in working in Dubai, and I am to take drilling superintendent to the immigration office for some matters, and I get in his car, and he starts the car, and there's music playing that begins to make sense to me. And he wants to turn it off, and I said, "Don't turn it off, let me listen." And this is first time I'm listening to the country music.
Right.
And I have fallen in love with that, and it's been just amazing that how I could understand and how I could relate to those stories through country music that was being told. So that was first time that I heard the America's country music.
Now, the generosity you experienced from Americans, as well as your study of its laws and constitution, also helped in a decision, sort of a conflict between your wife and you about where you go next to study. You had been accepted to Harvard. You wanted to go to America, but Ghazala your wife thought you were going to England. So how did that decision, what was the result of that?
Yeah, it was, the reason was that being a colonized part, everyone went to the master's homeland, meaning to the Britain, to educate so that you can learn a little more and then come back and pursue whatever career you wish to pursue. That was the trend among anyone that went to study abroad. And there were very few people that were coming to the United States, but in the deep down in my subconscious was this love of Declaration of Independence. I wanted to be there. I wanted to see how these people, what they have that had made them then so long ago so special, so exceptional to the world. They were not depending on their military might or on their financial or economic might and all that. They were mighty. They were depending on the ideas of human dignity, ideas of uplifting. So it was at the deep down in my soul and in my conscious and subconscious was that aspiration that I had gotten after reading these documents. So I tell Ghazala that if I could afford, I would go to United States. And she said, but there is better market if you study in England, then we go back and we settle there, and you could do so much better in your career, because that's what most lawyers did from Pakistan, from India, from subcontinent, came and did their Bharat law, went back and had a better future. But so we agreed that I will come to United States. It required some convincing, but she agreed. She had been my support and my strength from the very first days since I had met her.
Exactly. And when I read the book, it reminded me a lot of my family, in the sense that my grandfather came here in 1921 by himself. He came over on a ship, the Providence, and I was able to take my two daughters to Ellis Island and read the ledger of that ship. And I saw, first of all, in first class, there were 100 people. In second class, there were 200 people. He was in steerage with 1,800 other people. And then you read down and it said money on hand, $5. And it said occupation, and it listed him as a peasant. We were always told that, and my father made it a point to always ask my grandfather in front of us, why did you leave the known and come to the unknown? Why did you take that huge risk, not knowing anybody, not knowing where you were going, never having been to America? Why did you do that? And his answer was always the same, very consistent, and that was to give his children and his grandchildren a better life. And that is where I've come to learn that is the American dream. And when I read your book, I loved how you talked about you had that silver Samsonite suitcase, and you had $200, which was not much at that time, nowhere to live, you didn't know anybody. Why did you take that risk?
It's the story of all immigrants, and I briefly digress here. When I read the Declaration, even today when I read the Declaration of Independence, the grievance number 7 speaks volume of the spirit of immigration, why our forefathers wanted immigration. And they wanted immigration because immigrants contribute so very much to this nation for its prosperity, to its well-being. And the king was limiting the immigration. Anyway, my fascination and my aspiration was that I want to come to this nation to see with my own eyes how this great nation has come together, has lived under those principles and dignities. I did not come here to see tall buildings or more cars or other mites that America has and will have, God willing. I came to see how, based on these principles, a nation has come together and has become a beacon of hope for the rest of the world. And that is what America has meant to us and remains a beacon of hope for us, that there is better future not only for the immigrants but their generations and generation after generation. It is with that hope and it is with that aspiration that I came and immigrants come to this land. So our story in the book is a tribute to that spirit of immigration. Immigrants, people say sometime in conversations that this is nation of immigrants. I say, but more. This is the nation of the spirit of immigration. The spirit of immigration is to make your life better, make your generation's life better. Who wouldn't want to have that spirit among its nation to make life better?
Exactly. But what I admired is that you said that you weren't satisfied with just putting your feet on the ground here. Why is that?
Well, same teaching of my grandfather, that a person's life is not complete unless you further your education. So once I came, and his instruction always had been, and which is my motto, that lack of resource is no excuse not to proceed further. You must find ways to continue to move forward, and that had been in the back of my conscience and my mind, that I must complete my education. Yeah. Lack of resources, so what? You can do 2 jobs and you can do bare minimum wage jobs and save and move forward. So it is that I wanted to learn more. I wanted to complete education in America, and so I will have a better chance of moving forward.
Yeah, and you came to Houston, and that is where you really kind of assimilated into the culture. You talk about learning about bus routes, and you can't believe that a bus shows up on time. Talk about how easy it is to just have a phone line in your house, and houses actually have addresses. And you even went so far as you bought a cowboy hat and a Chevy Impala.
That's right. That's right.
But one thing that I found interesting is that you were okay with money being taken out of your paycheck. You were okay with paying taxes. Why is that?
Even today, I ask my American friends to pause for a moment. This is a time for the entire nation to reflect that why it is absolutely necessary for us to have full faith and credit in our government, in our system of government, in our rule of law, in our tax system, in our other system of government. And the reason is that the environment, the system that I came from, only those who could not swindle paid the tax. Ordinary citizens paid the tax. The rich did not pay tax. But here, everyone pays tax. And that is how we have these services, meaning the bus service, the fire department, the police department, the courts, and the judicial system. And it is an obligatory on every citizen to contribute to it. And how do we contribute? We contribute by paying our share of tax. Without that, we will not have the fire department. And that was I learned it at a very early time in America that this is the reason we have addresses. Back there, the money that is allocated for address goes in the pocket of the ruler, the pocket of the minister, the pocket of the mayor. No signs, no functioning police department, no functioning fire department. The reason these services exist because we pay tax. We must pay tax so that all of this continues to exist. So you will say, and friends criticize me for that, so you think that this is the perfect place? Not at all. There is so much room to make it better, but this is the best place. I implore my native-born American citizens to take leave for 6 months, go live elsewhere. You will come back and you will kiss the ground that, my God, we have the best place. We can make it better. We are not there yet. Our journey is not complete yet. So much more needs to be done towards vulnerable communities, towards minorities, towards our civil rights and civil liberties. But we live in a blessed society, blessed country, which is the best in the world.
Yeah. And someone who spoke just as you did there, you were able to speak in Houston. And it was someone who you were willing to, on a hot Houston day, where people are wearing T-shirts and shorts, you dressed up in a suit to go see him speak. Who was that? And what type of influence did he have?
Yeah, that was Ronald Reagan. I just could not imagine that I will have the dignity to watch or listen or stand in the same park where President of the United States to be elected because of the elections and all that. I'll be able, because that privilege is reserved only very few from where I had come. So I put on my suit and my tie and all that and overdressed, show up at the park, and I listened to him and listened to his speech and his vision of America. Today, and I cite that paragraph in the book, when I heard his last speech, then I was not a citizen. I became citizen afterwards, but I had admired him, where he says of America, of American nation, a shining city on hill. And the city has walls. When he said that, I was sitting down on the sofa in the living room. I stood up. I didn't want to miss a word of what Reagan was saying in that speech. And he says, that city has walls, and that wall has doors. Anyone with the courage and ability to contribute can walk through those doors. It is that what we need today. It is that what we need today. We remain beacon of hope for the rest of the world. Even under these circumstances, world looks up to the leadership of America, and it saddens me to see that table after table of world leadership, we are moving away. We are moving away. We are leaving this someone else to decide. We are not at the table anymore. In so many venues, at so many places throughout the world, yet world continues to look up to United States for leadership because of our principles, because of our founding documents, because how we have lived up until now. I received a 26-page letter after speaking at the convention from a retired Army nurse. 26 pages. She said, Mr. Khan, I have served in Second World War. And she tells her whole story. And at the end, on the 26th page, she instructs us. She said, Mr. and Mrs. Khan, continue to speak. Continue to speak. Had more people spoken prior to Second World War, we could have avoided all the atrocities that were committed against the mankind, especially against our Jewish brothers and sisters. All that could have been avoided. Continue to speak. It is for that reason, it is these values that have made America a beacon of hope for the rest of the world. And it is up to us now, all those that are blessed with these dignities that enshrine in our founding documents to remain standing, remain in protection of these values, so that rest of the world, rest of the mankind looks up to us for moral leadership, for world leadership. And I'm not talking about military, I'm not talking about economic might, I'm talking about human dignities and human values.
Exactly. And there are, not just people outside of the United States, but there are people inside the United States that need to hear this as well. Because unfortunately, in the past year and past years, we've heard a lot of rhetoric, a lot of speech against the values that you just spoke of. In my district on the Central Coast of California, we have a number of immigrants who have come there to contribute to the economy, to our communities, to the culture there on the Central Coast. We have a number of dreamers in that area. We have a junior college there in Salinas, California that has nearly 900 dreamers. Yet at this point, as you can imagine, there's a lot of angst, a lot of anxiety, a lot of uncertainty. What would you say to those dreamers to provide them with some sort of reassurance that, you being here is what this country is about? How could you reassure them?
Sure. I simply refer back to our founding documents that this anomaly that we are going through, this is momentary. This will pass. Have faith, have your trust. I know it is very difficult. I know under these circumstances it is impossible to maintain your dignity, maintain your faith in the basic core values of this nation. But we may not like it. Our time has chosen us to face this difficulty. And after the difficulty, which is momentary, we will see that America comes back to its constitutional, its fundamental, its basic principles, where those who contribute to this nation are welcomed. I am given a number. This is where the sadness, my sadness, comes from, by the decisions of these executive orders and these laws that are being passed to discourage the settlement of contributing immigrants, peaceful and law-abiding citizens of this country, the immigrants, is this: that there is no immigration policy. There are lots of immigration laws. And you will say, well, what is immigration policy? Immigration policy is this: that how many people are retiring 5 years, 10 years, 20 years from now? Who will replace them? How their retirement income will be retired, that they will not be actively earning. Who would replace them? That is one issue. This is not being policy-wise implemented or discussed. Second, and more important, is that's where answer to your question comes from. It is reported that we have approximately 7 million unemployed Americans, approximately reported numbers. Then we have 6.2 million technology jobs that are unfilled. It is that makes me sad, that these newly arrived Americans, I call them, I borrow this term from our neighbors to the north, from Canada. They do not call their immigrants or aliens, illegal aliens, undocumented worker, documented worker, not at all. There they use a term that speaks so volume about the mentality of the nation. They call them new Canadians. The moment you fill up the form says new Canadian, you are in the process. Of course there have to be laws, there has to be security concerns and all of that. That is all necessary, absolutely necessary. But this absence of immigration policy is what is needed, and that is where the encouragement for the people that are affected by these executive order after executive order, maligning the immigrant communities, is momentary. This will not last for very long. So I encourage them to remain faithful, continue to build your career, continue to contribute to the well-being of this country, continue to be the custodian of the safety and security of this country. It is with that spirit that we will come together. And I have spoken to, as I was telling you earlier, 166 communities throughout the nation, Portland, Oregon, to Los Angeles, to Texas, to Iowa, to Minneapolis, to Pittsburgh, to Annapolis, to Indianapolis. Everywhere there is a strong sense and a strong belief, stronger belief in our values that this anomaly will not last too long. We must accommodate. There is so much room, as I say, that I always read whenever there is a conversation about the Declaration of Independence. There is a seventh grievance where we had complained to the king about not allowing enough immigration. Our forefathers then had understood that without proper immigration we will not prosper. They listed that grievance, and I read it to you. This is grievance number 7. This is part of our Declaration of Independence, and it says, he, meaning the king, he has endeavored to prevent the population of these states for that purpose, obstructing the laws for naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migration here. Meaning they knew that immigrants bring vitality. They make the society dynamic. They contribute to the well-being of this nation. Therefore, that spirit shall prevail. That spirit, the value of immigration, the value of immigrants is in the basic DNA of this nation. And that is the hope for all those who are here, who will be here, and those who are momentarily considering this immigration to be a nuisance, to be a problem. I implore them to read the founding documents one more time so that you're aware of what immigrants bring and contribute to this nation.
Well, I think throughout our history, though, we've always had an anti-immigrant sentiment, unfortunately, be it against the Germans, against the Irish, against the Italians, against Mexicans. It's there, unfortunately. But that is why I completely agree with you. We do need an immigration policy. Unfortunately, the last time our Congress, our government has dealt with an immigration policy was 1986, President Ronald Reagan. And so you are seeing on the Central Coast, immigrants are basically industries being hurt by it. In the Salinas Valley, we have rows and rows of crops going unpicked. In the Silicon Valley, we have the number of high-tech jobs unfilled, as you spoke of. And that's why I think it's important that we do have that type of policy put forward, and I completely agree with you. When you were actually sworn in, you had passed the test 9 years, sworn in to get your citizenship and took the oath. You had passed the test 9 years before that, correct? You had been in America. You had you'd gone to Harvard by then. You had paid your taxes. Your family was here. You felt American in every way, but on paper. Did raising your hand and taking that oath really make a difference to you?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I remember how sentimental and emotional I was when I took the oath of citizenship. I entered, before entering in the courtroom to take the oath of citizenship, I paused for a second. I often reflect and I look back where I have come from and what is about to happen. That all those values, all those dignities that are enshrined in these documents, I am not entitled to. I have nothing, no dignities, no civil liberties, no right to protest, right to freedom of speech, right to freedom of religion. I have none of that. And then I'm to enter the courtroom. I took the oath, and I'm given a green piece of paper which says Certificate of Naturalization. Even today, when I think of those moments, that now, when I exit the courtroom after taking that oath, I am a person of dignity. I am a person as my Creator has made me, with all these dignities were mine, but I did not have them. Going through this process, becoming an American citizen, I have those dignities. So it meant so very much. I came out with the rest of the group and got my certificate and got the flag and all that. And I came out, walked to my car, and nothing has changed. But inside me, everything has changed. That from having nothing to having everything. And I don't mean money or might or status and all that. Not at all. It's the human dignities that this nation bestows upon its citizens that no other nation does. And I challenge all of America to reconsider, pause, think that these values enshrined in our documents are worth standing for, worth fighting for. Captain Humayun Khan, by the way, wrote an article when he was being admitted to a dormitory, University of Virginia. He already was part of the ROTC at University of Virginia. That dormitory called Hereford College has a policy people to write article for admission to the dormitory. The title of his article was Democracy Requires Vigilance and Sacrifice. How relevant it is today.
Yeah.
All America needs to be vigilant. Our system of government, our system of values is under attack. Those who have not forgotten the grudge that they have had because of the disintegration of Soviet Union, they have held that grudge in their heart, in their souls. We will get even with America, and their ugly hands have touched our integrity of our election, our voting system, our rule of law. They have directly attacked. I trust the declaration of the experts of this nation's national security that, yes, there had been involvement of those who do not wish us well, Russia's involvement through corrupt practice, through illegal means to dishonor the integrity of our election, of our system of government. We must remain vigilant, and we must remain vigilant so that these values are protected. So it is that I walked in without anything, and I walked out being a dignified human being.
Exactly. The participation aspect of this government is what has influenced me and basically prompted me in the positions that I had been, being in the military, as a prosecutor, as a U.S. representative. And it was also because, my father made sure to tell me, because you were allowed to live the reality of your grandfather's dream, then you damn well better give back to the country and community that gave you so much. And it seems that that was sort of the ethic, it was the ethic, that you and your son, Captain Humayun Khan, had as well. And when he told you, when he was at University of Virginia, and he told you he was going to be part of the ROTC program, how did you handle that? And what was your response?
Yeah, concern about his education, about we wanted him to continue after undergrad studies he wanted to go to law school. So we had that conversation with him that when you interrupt your education, it is difficult to fall back and come back to that discipline and all. But his reason was so convincing to us that whenever he is with the cadets, he finds himself in his element. The honor, the help, the courtesy, the respect, the hard work. That is amazingly exceptional among the cadets of ROTC program, and he wishes to join them. So reluctantly that he promised that he will continue his education further after he completes his commitment after serving. Plus, he was so influenced by the University of Virginia, its environment of public service. Thomas Jefferson, he was avid reader of Thomas Jefferson in his writing, especially about public service, about giving to the nation that had given so much to every citizen. So reluctantly, but we agreed that that he's joining it for honorable purposes.
Yeah. From the way you wrote about him, it seemed that he was the model soldier, and you alluded to this in your last statement. But he was very neat and tidy. He had that military bearing, so much so that he folded his dirty clothes. Correct. And then he was deployed to Iraq in 2004. Yet this was a war that you were openly against. How did you reconcile that? It's not a private sentiment. I had been public with this, that I could see that our entanglement in that part of the world will not serve our nation well. But that is a separate debate. And I did speak with Captain Humayun Khan about this, that no good comes out of the conflicts that are in that part of the world for centuries. And his answer was this, that I am a military officer. I have taken the oath to defend the Constitution, and I will remain faithful to my oath. And the political decisions are made in Washington. I perform my duty of protection, of making sure that those who are under my responsibility are safe, and I am going to be doing that. I don't think that way. And that was sufficient for us, that he is being faithful to the oath of the service that he took. And we yielded, but we were concerned. He is interred in Arlington National Cemetery. And it was during your speech to the Democratic National Convention, 2016, that you asked whether or not candidate Trump had ever been to Arlington Cemetery. Why did you ask that?
It is absolutely necessary for the Commander-in-Chief of the United States Armed Forces must go and stand, face the tombstones of Arlington Cemetery. I go there so often. Ghazala goes with me so often. We stand there and we fully realize what liberty means by looking at those tombstones. 19 years old, 20 years old, 21 years old, stood to defend our liberty, stood to defend our Constitution, our way of life, our democracy. Without a pilgrimage to Arlington Cemetery, no commander is complete. You must go there and see the price of liberty, so that you can make sure that the liberty, our values, our democracy is protected from those who do not wish us well. It is that reminder that is so visible there, that the price of liberty in Arlington Cemetery.
You're able, I recently took my two daughters there, and you're able to see the names from all different backgrounds, but you're also to see certain quotes on some of the headstones. If not me, then who? I just want to do my part. And then I also went up to JFK's grave, where I saw one of his quotes that read, "In the long history of mankind, very few generations are granted the opportunity to defend freedom at its maximum hour. We do not shrink from that responsibility, we welcome it." Being that you lost a son in a war, do you still welcome the United States' responsibility to defend freedom?
Of course, of course. We constantly invite members of the ROTC and other members of the armed forces to our home to come and pay a visit. And that is where I offered them the copy of the Constitution. And the reason for that is exactly that sentiment. And Ghazala always says, whenever we are invited to an event where our men and women are present in uniform, are present, she always says that we gave one son, but look, we got thousands, and those who are serving, those who have served, all of them are our sons and daughters. Yes, our liberty, our democracy must be defended. And it is those who so willingly, so bravely, so heroic to go and defend our way of life, our democracy, our values in the face of extreme difficult time. And they're our heroes. It is because of them that we are free. Otherwise, the menace of terrorism had knocked at our doors if it wasn't because of their sacrifices in foreign lands and under most difficult circumstances. They go to challenge this menace that faces humanity, menace of terrorism. It is them that are keeping us safe at home, and we owe every moment of our liberty to their sacrifice, to their service. Men and women in armed forces, in law enforcement, we pay tribute to them every opportunity that we get. It is because of them that we are safe, that we are peaceful at home.
Great. Thank you very much for this opportunity. It's been an honor to be able to sit down with you, to not just hear your thoughts, but to feel your emotions behind each and every word that you speak. And I think that's why there are so many people throughout this country, throughout this world, that not only respect you, but value who you are, what your family's been through, and what you will continue to say to all of us to motivate people to continue living up to the values of this country.
Congressman, I must end my conversation by paying tribute to you for your service, for your continued leadership in our Congress. We need leaders like you. The heritage that you have brought with you had been backbone of our strength. We have seen Honorable Leon Panetta, and I repeat myself that the ethical, moral leadership that he brought to Washington had been at the core of our strength. So thank you for your leadership and your family's leadership. We are grateful.
Thank you. Appreciate it.